home. I'm at home. I'm at school. I'll meet you at 5. I'll call you at 6. Let's look at what happens to the word to. We don't say to the store. We say to the store. To go. I'd like to go to the store. One more time. I'd like to go to the store. Don't say I'd like to go to the store. One more. To work. I'm going to work. I'd like to talk to you. All right? Let's look at what happens to for. We reduce the O and it becomes a. For. Repeat after me. For a while. For a while. For a moment. For a long time. I haven't seen you for a long time. All right, let's look at what happens to or. Or becomes just a consonant We don't say yes or no. We can say yes or no. Good or bad. Good or bad. This or that. Would you like this or that? Now, there could be a reason that you want to extend the or if you decide you want to say, do you want this or that? If you're thinking or if you don't know what you're going to say next, of course, you can change it. But remember, if you're continuing the sentence and you know where you're going with the sentence and what you're going to say, and there's no pause after the or, then make sure you say it a little faster and reduce the vowel and just say Look at this one, our. We don't say, this is our house. We say, our. This is our house. This is our house. This is our car. Do you like our new garden? Here's our number. All right? And let's look at what happens to and. In this case, we reduce the A and the D. Those disappear often. And for example, we don't say rock and roll music. We say rock and roll. I love rock and roll. In and out becomes in and out. In and out. John and Mary becomes John and Mary. I'm going to talk to John and Mary. This and that. This and that. What are you doing? This and that. Let's try some sentences now. I'd like to see you for a moment. I'd like to see you for a moment. Sooner or later, you'll meet our parents. Sooner or later, you'll meet our parents. I went to work at 9 o'clock. I went to work at 9 o'clock. I had bacon and eggs for breakfast. I had bacon and eggs for breakfast. Do you like black and white or color photos? Do you like black and white or color photos? Again, remember, reducing function words does not mean you're speaking really fast. You still have to slow down on the content words. Let's learn how to reduce pronouns, and by reducing them, how to make your speech sound more natural. All right, let's look at what happens when we have pronouns that begin with the letter H or the letter TH. If we say he did, we pronounce the H, but when he comes later, when it's not in the beginning of the word, we generally reduce it. So we don't say did he, we very often say did he? Did he go? Did he do it? Of course, if you want to speak very carefully and really pronounce things and very formally, you might want to say, did he do that? But you will hear most Americans just say did he? Did he do it? Could he? We say could he? Could he help me? Should he? Should he? Should he call you? Would he? Sounds like would he. When we say him, the same thing happens. Very often, instead of saying I told him, we just drop the H and we say I told him. Instead of saying call him, we'll drop the H and we will say I'll call him. I'll call him. I'll call him tomorrow. Ask him. You say it. Ask him. Ask him. I'll ask him a question. One more. See him. See him. I see him. When I see him, I'll say hello. Let's look at what happens to the word her. Same thing. We drop the H. We don't say call her. Generally, when people are speaking naturally, we say call her. I'll call her. Love her. Love her. I really love her. Like her. Like her. And one more. Drive her. In fact, drive her sounds like this. Driver. He's a good driver, or I'll drive her. It sounds the same. I'll drive her. And one more. Them. The TH also gets reduced. For example, we don't say, I will pick them up. We drop this TH and we say, pick 'em. Pick 'em up. I'll pick 'em up after school. Need them sounds like need 'em. Buy them sounds like buy 'em. So when the pronoun begins with an H or a TH, this is what we do. And it can be with the word he or his or him or her or hers or them. These are the situations where we can eliminate the first consonant. Let's practice some sentences now. I'll talk to him when I see him. I'll talk to him when I see him. He wants her to know that he loves her. He wants her to know that he loves her. I'll pick him up and take him home. I'll pick him up and take him home. Is that his car? No, that's his brother's car. Is that his car? No, that's his brother's car. She cut her hair, and I didn't recognize her. She cut her hair, and I didn't recognize her. Keep in mind, when the pronoun is the first word of the sentence, you would never eliminate the H or the TH. They would never be silent. You have to always pronounce them. Also, sometimes there is a special reason to stress the pronoun. For example, I love him, or I want to talk to him. In that case, of course, you would also always pronounce that first consonant. Let's talk about contractions. Contractions are very important to use in your everyday speech. Students who don't use contractions often sound like they're just beginning to learn English, like they're at the first stages and they're still pronouncing every word separately and still learning vocabulary. That's the impression Americans get when people don't use contractions. For example, we wouldn't say do not do that. We would say don't do that. And probably you're already doing that. I'm assuming you're using contractions in your speech. However, I find that a lot of my students tend to avoid certain contractions. They feel comfortable saying don't, but maybe with have or has or will, they're not quite sure how to do it and they pronounce it incorrectly, or they just completely avoid it. Let me tell you one more thing. Sometimes we do separate the words. For example, I can say do not do that. If I'm very angry, do not do that. Or I did not do it. No, I didn't. I really didn't. I did not. So for special emphasis, Americans don't contract. In most other cases, they do. One more thing, in written language, you will not see that many contractions. But in spoken language, it's very different. Let's look at another example. I've been there. When people speak, this is how they talk. I've been there. They don't say, I have been there. Of course, if they want to emphasize it, I have been there. I have. I really have. In that case, that's different. But in normal speech, you would definitely make this contraction. I've been there. Let's practice contracting some very common words. The word will. I will. Sounds like I'll. Repeat after me. I'll. Don't say I'll. Put a little between the I and the L. I'll. I'll. I'll call you. I'll see you. I'll talk to you. He will. Remember, don't pronounce that W. A lot of my students still tend to put a little W and they say he'll. It's not he'll, it's he'll. He'll. He'll call you. He'll talk to you. She'll. She'll do it. How about they will? They'll. They'll see you. And here's a difficult one. It will. How does that sound? Don't say it'll. Let's change that T into a fast D and say it'll. It'll rain. It'll be hot. It'll be nice. It'll rhymes with the word little. We don't say little, we say little. It'll, little. That's a hard one. Let's practice contracting the word would. I would sounds like I'd. I would and I had sound exactly the same when they're contracted. They both sound like I'd. I would go, I'd go. I had gone, I'd gone. They sound the same. How about he would? He'd. She would, she'd. We would, we'd. Repeat after me. We'd like it. They'd love it. Let's practice has. He has, he's. Is and has sound the same when they're contracted. So when we say he's, it could be that we are saying he is or he has. He is here, he's here. He has been, he's been. Let's practice are. That's an easy one. You are, you're. They are, they're. We are, we're. We're hungry. They're home. You're tall. Let's practice some with have. I have. I've. They have. They've. We have. We've. They've been there. We've been married for a long time. Okay, let's practice some sentences now. It'll rain all day. It'll rain all day. It's good that you're home. It's good that you're home. He'll call me and I'll give him the number. He'll call me and I'll give him the number. We waited because you said you'd come. We waited because you said you'd come. I've already eaten, but he's still hungry. I've already eaten, but he's still hungry. Remember, contractions are not necessarily casual speech. This is how people talk. Let's talk about some difficult contractions now. When I give speech evaluations to my accent reduction students, these are the ones that many people pronounce incorrectly. Let's take a look at them. When we have the word have, which is an auxiliary verb in this case, could have been, could have done, could have seen, we almost always contract that when we're speaking. A lot of my students make a mistake and they just add the V and they say could've. It's not could've. We put a little sound in there and it sounds like this. Of, could've. It sounds like this. Think about dove, which is a bird, the bird dove, and say could've, 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 could've. Let's practice that. I could have told you. Should have. Let's do that. The same thing. We're going to say dove or of. Should have. You should have known. Would have. Don't say would've. It's would have. Let's practice that. You should have told me. I could have helped you. He would have loved it. Let's look at what happens when we have the word not in there. It gets even more difficult. When we have not, we don't say could not have. Look at this. We pronounce the D and then we connect the D next to the N, and then the O disappears, but the T also disappears. Watch this. We say couldn't, and then we add this element. We do it like this. Couldn't have, couldn't have. Don't pronounce the O, don't pronounce the T. This one is hard, isn't it? Let's practice it again. Couldn't have, couldn't have. Okay, should not have becomes shouldn't have. Would not have becomes wouldn't have. Let's practice some sentences. He couldn't have done it. One more time. He couldn't have done it. She shouldn't have told you. She shouldn't have told you. One more. They wouldn't have known. They wouldn't have known. Let's look at one final point. When this is a question, would you have? We basically do this also. We say, would you have? 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 Should you have? Should you have? Strange, isn't it? That's how people speak. Let's practice some sentences. How would she have known? How would she have known? What would you have done? What would you have done? Now let's practice the sentences for all three examples. You should have seen it. You should have seen it. You would have liked it. You would have liked it. I shouldn't have said that to him. I shouldn't have said that to him. I wouldn't have called you if I'd known you were sleeping. I wouldn't have called you if I'd known you were sleeping. You wouldn't have been tired if you'd gone to bed earlier. You wouldn't have been tired if you'd gone to bed earlier. What would you have said to her? What would you have said to her? Okay. Remember, could have, couldn't have, would you have? Let's learn to fix another very common mistake that people make. There are certain words that have vowels which are not pronounced at all, and the syllable disappears. Let me show you. When we say the word basic, it has two syllables. If we add A-L-L-Y, we don't say basically. This A disappears. So the A is not pronounced, and we say basically. Take a look at this one. Actual. 3 syllables. Actual. But if we add the ly, like here, this disappears, and we say actually. Actually. We don't say actually. There are some more words like that. Practical. Practical. We don't say practically. We drop the A and we say practically. Physical. How would we say that? Physically, not physically. Let's do a few more words. Accident. When we add accidentally, we don't pronounce the A, we say accidentally. Accidentally. One more, general. When we add the ly, we say generally. Generally, not generally. Let's look at a few more words where these strange disappearing syllables occur. In this case, the E is dropped. We don't say vegetable. A lot of my students say vegetable or vegetable. This E disappears, and this A is reduced because it's part of the unstressed syllable, and we say vegetable. Vegetable. Let's look at a few more. Most people don't say interesting. They say interesting. Interesting. This TR are connected. Interesting. Look at this one. We don't say different. We say different. The E disappears. Different. Here are a couple of words with the letter O that a lot of people get wrong. We don't say chocolate. We say chocolate. And remember, don't say chocolate. It's chocolate. I'd like some chocolate. And this next word is very difficult for a lot of people. My students regularly ask me how to pronounce it because they know they're saying something wrong when they compare their pronunciation to the pronunciation of a native speaker. Let me show you how to do it. We don't say comfortable. This is what happens. The O disappears, but then there's one more very strange thing that happens, and that's the RT becomes a TR. They change positions. Listen. Comfortable. 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 I'm very comfortable. Most Americans pronounce it like that. All right, now let's take a look at a list of words. Each one of these words contains one vowel, one syllable, which is not pronounced. Look at these words and repeat after me. Aspirin. Don't say aspirin, say aspirin. Evening. Evening. Family. Family. beverage, beverage. Naturally, naturally. Catholic, Catholic. Miserable, miserable. Favorite, favorite. Extraordinary. Don't say extraordinary, say extraordinary. Preference, preference. Temperature, temperature. Broccoli. Don't say broccoli, say broccoli. Diamond, diamond. Laboratory. Don't say laboratory, say laboratory. Several, several. Opera, opera. Camera, camera. All right, let's practice some sentences. I'd like a chocolate beverage. I'd like a chocolate beverage. Let's go to a different restaurant. Let's go to a different restaurant. Every evening, she takes an aspirin. Every evening, she takes an aspirin. Basically, they're different. Basically, they're different. I went to an extraordinary opera last night. I went to an extraordinary opera last night. I actually like broccoli. I actually like broccoli.